Once again, it's just your boy, Dr. Theo.
It's on.
And I'm
It's
chilling
on.
with my guy, Hollis Edwards.
It's on.
And
It's
once
on.
again, it is on.
It's
this
on.
is We Call Next,
Yes,
episode 3.
Yes.
And this episode is going to be our final episode before we start to have guests. But before we get too far into episode 3, Hollis, please give us a recap of episode 2, which was Pass the Rock.
Yeah, Pass the Rock. So, hey, what's going on, everybody? You know, we appreciate, you guys tuning in for episode 2. If you have not seen episode 2, it's really all about the Rock, which was Jesus Christ, right? And so we go into depth and into detail about Theo and I and our journey and how we came to Christ and how we made that transition from basketball to walking and understanding that God was actually bigger than basketball for us. So even though this is a basketball themed show, we really want to go into depth and detail and just kind of be transparent to share our lives, and hoping that maybe you will see some parallels in your life, or maybe it inspire you or encourage you to do something similar. So that's what Pass the Rock episode 2 was all about. First one was our background, second one was our journey into Christ, and now today's episode, From Ballers to Balling.
From ballers to balling. That sounds like one of those titles you think that we talking about how we became millionaires and billionaires.
Right.
Not exactly. We on our way, but not there yet.
No doubt.
The reason behind this particular episode, From Ballers to Balling, was we wanted to showcase out there how difficult it may be for some to transition from basketball or whatever your respective sport is to life after. And we all know those stories about chasing the dream, chasing the hoop dream, not necessarily having a backup plan, and really struggling with that. But fortunately, we also have some success stories.
Yeah.
So I know, like with me, my favorite player of all time, bar none, is Magic Johnson.
Jick.
Like I'm a huge, yes, I'm a huge LeBron fan, but to me, Magic, that's my favorite player of all time. And I think Magic has to be in the top 3 guaranteed in terms of athletes who made the transition from their sport to other areas, whether it was family, with business, ownership. And when you hear Magic talk, he talks a lot about how basketball, the hard work, the ethic, the teamwork, all those things, those skills and those attributes, how it translated and how they helped them in the business world. So I know Magic is one of those examples. I also think about, you got to think about Kobe. Rest in peace, the late, great Kobe Bryant.
No doubt. Kobe Bean.
His second half of life after basketball, as great as his career was, and to me he was one of the GOATs, I think his life after basketball was going to be even greater, more profound. And I think a lot of it was he was obsessed with basketball, but even before basketball, he was well-rounded. He knew that ball would eventually stop dribbling, and once it did, he hit the ground running with that same passion. And then we could think about people like LeBron, of course, MJ, with all he's doing as a businessman or owner. But Hollis, there are some other players out there that we may not know their story. They're not as famous. And it's important that we highlight them too, because we may be thinking like, well, unless we're going to be the next MJ or the next Kobe, why is this important to me? So tell us about some other players, some other athletes you may know who made the transition, but maybe just aren't on that level of the MJs and the Magics and the Kobes and LeBron.
Yeah, I think that's important. I'm a spotlight one player in particular because he's from Northwest Indiana, our crib, which is Junior Bridgman from East Chicago. Junior Bridgman, from what I recall, played for the Milwaukee Bucks, but he's more known for being a businessman outside of the NBA. And he owns a bunch of, I believe it's restaurants, fast food restaurants, and I don't want to misquote, But I think I read somewhere that he might have been worth like over 500 million or something to that effect. So for those of you out there, you can Google Junior Bridgman. But the key point in all of this episode and to what Theo was just mentioning, which Magic Johnson has really led the way and was one of the first to do it. I mean, Junior Bridgman was before him, but as far as being well known, is that it's called the word transition. So that's the word that was really in my spirit when Theo, as you were talking. What we're really talking about is transition and how well you can make that transition. So what we were seeing with Kobe, to your point, Kobe Bean, shout out to him, the greatness that he had, but his transition game was on fire. His transition game was on point. And that's where a lot of us, as a people, sometimes as basketball players, we sometimes may struggle because the transition, are you planning, or what are you going to do when it's that time? Because inevitably everyone is going to have a transition. So if you're Chauncey Billups or Paul Pierce, who you got microphones being handed to you to pick and choose what TV show you want to be on, right? Or what game you want to commentate, or whatever the case may be. But many of us aren't like that because it's scarce, and it's only, 420 jobs roughly in the NBA as far as players. Well, there's even less jobs as far as national broadcasters. And there's even there's only a few NBA shows, NBA TV, ESPN, and ABC. I watch them all, right? So the thing is, what is your transition game? How are you preparing to transition? So if we're talking to young kids out there that are in college, that play with Theo, as a professor, or going to school with my sons, or whatever the case may be. What are your transition game going to look like? What is your transition game going to look like? People in basketball lose games because they don't get back in transition because their transition game is not good. So what is your transition game?
So now he talking metaphors, y'all.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So our transition is really what we're talking about. So when you're talking about ballers, from ballers to balling, really what we're talking about is our transition and the importance of having a tight transition game.
And hearing you say that, one thing popped in my mind is what are some of the primary reasons we don't get back in transition? We're complaining about the calls that didn't go our way.
That's deep.
Think about that, Hollis. Complaining about the calls didn't go our way.
Right.
So we're trying to get back something that we've already lost instead of getting back on D and recouping that.
Yes.
We're arguing about something that we can no longer control. We all have some situations where we may say, coach didn't do me right, or things didn't turn out the way they needed to in this thing. And we're so focused on that we lose out on the other opportunities to get it right.
Absolutely. And those things could be factual. Those things could be real. We're not saying it's made up, but you still got to get back.
Exactly. We know legit stories about favoritism or whatever, but are you going to allow that to hold you back? Is that going to be your excuse for your adult life?
Yes.
When there's things to be done, when there's money to be made, when there's degrees to be had, but we're too busy arguing over these missed calls.
Absolutely.
And so I definitely like that metaphor. Let's talk about some of those things getting back in transition in terms of what are the things we should be focusing on. And I know one of the things that's dear to my heart, being a college professor, and that's education.
Right.
So let's talk about education in terms of even before we had life after basketball, there was still life outside of basketball, or at least there should have been.
Yeah.
But some athletes focus so much on their craft in terms of their sport that they don't realize that if you become ineligible, you're still not going to be played anyway. So let's talk about maybe back in high school, what was it like in terms of how serious were you about your academics? Were you getting pressure from your parents? Were they about that life? or did you just barely get enough grades to stay eligible? What was your relationship with in terms of education and your sport, particularly with basketball?
Yeah, I mean, so, I'm going to try to be brief because I know sometimes I can be long-winded, but to be concise, it's kind of like I remember, so I lived with my dad when I was a ninth grader in high school, and I broke free in basketball. I was averaging about 20 a game, and they're all over me, and we're talking about, man, maybe you're gonna get ready to play, maybe on the varsity and all these things, and but my dad was like, that's all good, but you got a C in Spanish, and you can't play ball next year. So what I didn't understand at the time was he was actually challenging me in the right way, but because my academics were not as important, and because a lot of times we're programmed that your athletics is above academics, especially as a young black male.
Yeah.
I retreated from that, and I went back to Michigan City. That's not the only reason, but that was a big reason. And because in my mind, I at that point, I had the best grades that I had ever had or had in a long time, but I was getting that C in Spanish. I just could not get the accent down or anything. and so I share that, though, to just share with you that, yes, I did have somebody that was trying to get on me, but from a prioritization standpoint, that wasn't my priority. In my mind, you're stopping me or potentially stopping me or slowing me down from reaching my dreams.
And where were you living at?
I was living in Texas then. I was living in Texas.
So he challenged you because you had a C and said you couldn't play.
Yep.
And that caused you to move from Texas to Indiana.
Yep. I moved back. Yep. I only was there a year, and I moved
That's
back.
Funny.
Yeah. I retreated. I ran, and a lot of times, I could go on and on about stories of, and this ain't the podcast subject matter for this, but as far as the importance of having that male figure in those, especially in a young black male's life,
definitely, that's super important.
And a lot of times, a lot of things people think is hard, but really it's just discipline. And so, but I didn't know that at the time, and so I ran back home to mama, and I went back home, and so. And because mama was she is awesome and amazing my mom was, she was just happy I was in school. I wasn't in the streets. You know what I'm saying? I was doing what was right. And so I would fluctuate. As far as going back to your initial question, my importance of my grades, it would fluctuate. One semester I may make the honor roll just to show I could. And then 3 more semesters I would just not do anything and have do the work. So it was not a high priority to me. I never wanted anybody to think I wasn't intelligent, though. So that's probably why I would try to jump on the honor roll every now and then.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't a high priority. Our coaches in high school didn't push it. I don't recall any progress reports or any talking to the teachers. How's he doing in school? None of that. And coincidentally, when I graduated high school, I'm not ashamed to say, I was a Prop 48 coming out.
Oh, wow.
And I had one person, I still remember, called my mom's line, her number, because back in the day, you had your number, your mom's had her number. My mom had her own number, so they called her up and was like, your son ain't gonna be eligible to accept scholarships, and I'm like, how would he know? I passed the SAT, but little did I know, all that lollygagging in academics, I ended up, my GPA got low, and I'm not ashamed to say this, and so. For me, man, it was one of those things where academics, I fell for the programming early on. And if I could take an easy class, I would. If I could go in the study hall, I would. If I could go shoot ball with Mr. Moderado, I would. Shout out to Moderado.
Yeah.
No
doubt.
So
I had those classes too.
Yeah. So that was my experience coming up. What about you?
Yeah. So it was very, very similar, with the exception of I stayed with both parents, and it was my mother who was really about that academic life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so when I was in junior high, in my 6th grade year in elementary, I was MVP of the team. 7th grade year in junior high, I was MVP
But
of
you
the
were
team.
but you were 6'4" in probably 6th grade. But go ahead.
No, I was probably about 6'1", 6'1", 6'1".
Bigger than all the teachers, but keep it moving. Go ahead.
Yeah. But then 8th grade year, grade slipped, and my mom was like, "No, I'm shutting all this down." And so I had to sit out the first half of my 8th grade year.
Was
And
that
it
embarrassing?
Well, to be honest, I lied. I lied to cause I had got injured that year too. I got injured, and I told everyone it was the injury that kept me out.
Okay.
It was embarrassing because it's like they're hyped, they're ready for this last year in junior high, and I can't play.
Right.
And thank God then it was either based upon a progress report or we were getting the report cards often enough to where I was able to get that second half of the season. And it ended up costing me the MVP that year. And that's when it was a wake-up call for me in terms of my mom. She'd be like, "I'm glad you're doing well with this sport, but if we got to choose between the honor roll and the finger roll, we're going to go with the honor roll."
Honor roll or the finger roll, baby.
or the honor roll or the pick and roll.
Yeah.
Whatever roll we're going to be doing, it's going to be that honor roll.
Right.
And I necessarily had to get the honor roll. I just couldn't be bringing home no poor grades. And that kind of shook me up and woke me up for the rest of my high school, where I never got in trouble academically again. Doesn't mean I didn't have any poor grades at any other time, but I made sure for the most part my grades were up. And then even my junior senior year, I had the honor roll several times.
Yeah. And make sure you let your mom see this episode so she can know.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And
Yeah.
and what you say is that discipline though. And unbeknownst to us, that same discipline they were trying to instill in us was the same discipline that we would need in order to be successful on the court.
Right.
Because, you can't just roll out of bed all the time and be great on the court. Right. It takes that hard work. It takes that discipline. Right. And it's because of those lessons that even today as a professor, I am challenging athletes that as much as you want to play your sport, if you don't handle your business in the classroom, you're going to give someone else the power and the right to take that from you. And you got to handle your business, or let your business handle you.
Well, and that's important. But if you really think about it, just from a philosophical standpoint, if you really think about it, so you have these athletes. So let's just remove the scenario of basketball and just say you have these people who are trained gladiators. And they train all their lives to be gladiators. And they get the discipline, and they watch what they eat, they work out, they do all this stuff in the name of becoming a great gladiator. When they're no longer gladiators, would we ever expect them to not continue in that same path? To not continue to still have the same discipline? Would we ever think that while they're being a gladiator even, that they would be disciplined only when it's related to being a gladiator?
That's a good point.
That would never, no one would ever expect that. And so the reason why that happens is due to what I was saying earlier, whereas there's a level of programming, and not to go too deep, not to go down that rabbit hole, but there is a level of programming where the priority is what you're doing on the court, and it's not always a focal point on the classroom. And that in itself makes no real sense if we think about it. If we really look at that jewel I just dropped from a gladiator analogy, that just would make no sense in any other way.
No sense at all.
None. You're going to be that disciplined. Get up early, get up in the morning, go work out, play in. If you're from up north, you playing outside in the snow, you play in the rain, you do all this, but then you can barely read. Or you're not going to put forth effort in the classroom, or you won't go to class. That just makes no sense. There has to be some habits that are being formulated. We talk about the 10,000 hours and all that stuff. There has to be some mastery that's going to shift into the other parts of your life. Has to be. Has
No
to be.
doubt.
You have to try hard to be lazy, to be disciplined 90% of the time and lazy 10%. Like that's that takes another side of creativity. I think.
Definitely the wrong side. But
Wrong
speaking of
side.
shift, you talked about shift. Let's shift the focus. Let's talk about.
My boy Segway's cold, y'all.
Oh yeah, I'll be shifting gears.
Yeah.
Just like let's talk about our passions. Some of the passions that we've
Right.
gotten into outside of. First, some of the passions that still deal with basketball briefly.
Yeah.
But I really want to focus primarily on the non-basketball related passions.
Okay.
So I know for me, being someone, whatever level I had got to with basketball, I always knew that there was an opportunity to give back. And so I've, to this day, whenever there's an opportunity to do a basketball camp, I do those basketball camps.
Right.
And we've been blessed, my wife and I, as missionaries. I've been able to do basketball camps in Jamaica. We did basketball camps in South Africa a couple years ago. And so, as well as just locally. And for me, it ties two of my passions. One, the athleticism and the basketball, but then also we talked about passing the rock, which we got that term from basketball. And I often teach when I do these basketball clinics, especially if there's an opportunity to share the gospel. I always tell people how it's important that if Christ is that basketball, that you don't keep him to yourself, but you pass the rock.
There you go.
And so I've been able to marry those two passions, as well as now I'm working at an institution of higher ed, Bethel University, and I'm a de facto chaplain for the men's basketball team.
That's awesome.
And
That's
I've been investing in these young men even before I became a de facto chaplain. And when I say de facto, we don't have an actual chaplain position. It's just that's my function with these young men, whether it's doing Bible studies.
Yeah.
Speaking
They're not
with
basically de facto mean y'all. They're not paying him to do it. He just doing it out of his love. And passion.
That and the fact that the college itself doesn't even know that I'm doing it.
They will now.
The coach approached me and I said it's a done deal. And so, and I don't go around. I don't, go around making a big deal out. It's what I've always done because I made it through college because of those individuals who invested in me.
Yeah.
And there was one young man who just recently found out who tore his ACL, and I was able to minister to him in a very unique way because I had done that same thing. Yeah, and so he couldn't say, well, you don't know what I'm going through. Oh, I know exactly what you're going through.
I know what you're exactly
and so to me, that's an example of transitioning. We're still in basketball, but we're not necessarily playing on that level anymore. But there's still a way for us to give back. And there's been other ways to give back. So let's talk briefly about some of the ways in which you've been able to give back in terms of basketball. But then I also want you to transition to what are some of your passions that go beyond basketball that you've been able to use those basketball principles to help you out in these other areas?
Yeah, that's a dope question and opportunity to share because it started early on while I was still in undergrad. As I go back, man, I was helping out with the Special Olympics. And I was teaching them how to play ball. I remember being in the gym with them and, kind of showing them how to play ball and everything. So it started kind of there. And then I used basketball when I graduated. When I came back to Indiana, I was working for Michigan City area schools. And so after school, I would be, I guess they considered me an enrichment teacher of some sort. But all I did was teach basketball fundamentals. So for me, I have a couple of passions. One of them is teaching. And I have a passion about teaching. And then I have, obviously, the theme of this show being basketball. So I have a passion for basketball. So to me, that mirrored both. So and I'm big on the fundamentals. And so I was able to teach middle schoolers basketball fundamentals. And that's what they did. They came after class and they would, after school, and I would teach them. Run them through drills and things like that. So I enjoyed that. And and they paid me to do it. So that was really cool. You know,
That's the real reason why you do it. Tell the truth.
You know what I'm saying? No
kids, America,
you know,
money.
America, like they told like Shaq and like Shaq be on TNT. America, he's snitching. So, but no, you know, so it started there, and then from there, I had an opportunity to be a coach at the YMCA. I taught, you know, I was a coach there, working with a couple of different age groups, and then I was from there. I actually did AAU. When we moved, I was an AAU coach. I was asked to coach AAU, so I got fully invested in that, and really learned and really, you know, taught myself, because I had never really been a coach. I would have rather have been working with the kids on fundamentals more so than coaching, having to draw the X's and O's. Because that's not really my strength. The in-game adjustment. I can in-game adjust on an individual level. Like, okay, this guy's playing me like this. Okay, I'm going to do this a couple of times, and I'm going to get him right here at the end of the game. I could adjust that way, but as far as schematically on a team, that wasn't my strength. So I had to learn that, and I still don't know if I was great at it, but I got better at it. Obviously, I had to, because down south they take this stuff extremely serious. Sports. I mean, it would be. I remember looking around the gym and thinking that this is 6th grade. Gym is jam packed. I'm like, are y'all at the PTA meetings like this? Like, exactly. Golly, you know. But so I did that. Did the AAU. I stopped doing AAU because I was also coaching my sons, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And then from there, I helped out, helping. I was part of an organization, and I would like work with them through basketball and set up community service projects. So I would do that, utilizing basketball was to get them in the program. They played ball, but part of that, you had to come see me to do some community service programs and stuff like that. So I did that for a little bit, and feel like I'm forgetting some things, but you know, just basically, I got my hands involved as I'm talking about. I hadn't really thought about some of these things. Some of these things I hadn't even shared with you, but you know, as I'm thinking about it, I guess I've been involved directly using basketball in a lot of different ways.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the other part of your question was just...
And I want to make sure for the other part, I want you to focus, since we started off talking about education, and we didn't want to leave that hanging in terms of the importance of it, because although we both started off slow, eventually education did become a passion of yours. So talk about that.
Yeah, no doubt. So as I mentioned earlier, coming out of high school, Prop 48. You know, I'm a statistic in that vein, if you will. And but what I did was I wanted to play ball. I wanted to show also though that I was academically just as strong as anyone else. So I got eligible, and I went on to have extremely high marks. And you know,
marks,
and
you know, he's marks. He said marks.
Good grades, y'all. And so then from there, you know, I kind of got the bug, because I realized, you know, that hey, you know what? It was just all about prioritization. It was just all about, I never really focused on being so strong academically, and now that I am, and it didn't hurt that in between like summers, I worked jobs that I knew I did not want to do for the rest of my life. That helped a lot.
That's a motivation.
And so that's a motivation. So I was like, yo, I need to get this degree. So when I got the degree, and I had to go to summer school, catch up, because I transferred, lost credits. You know, I was ineligible at first when I went back to that school, so I was ineligible twice. Wasn't an academic piece while I was ineligible when I went to my last school, but it was more just when I left and when I arrived and all those things, and credits didn't transfer, so I had to go through that process again. So I actually was ineligible 3 times. I was actually ineligible 3 times.
Wow,
and
that's gotta be like a school record.
Gotta be. But it wasn't just for one school. It was when I was switch schools.
Oh,
but
I know,
but
that's why you was
with
in the Hall
all
of Fame, huh? You got all the school records.
But with that being said, y'all boy from Cool Spring got his degree, and then I went
No
on
doubt.
and got a master's in business, got an MBA, and then I said, you know what? Why not? And so then I went and got another master's degree, and then I said, you know what?
And what's that
Maybe
second master's degree in? What was
That
that?
was master in information systems, and then this last one, I'm 2 credits away. I had to pause for some life things, and but I'm 2 credits away from getting my 3rd master. So I went from
And what would that be in?
Human resources.
All right. Go
So
ahead.
and that's due to the things I'm doing on my job and my role within our employee resource group, which we can talk about. So, but the thing is, so I'm a person that went from Prop 48. Basically, the NCAA is saying that I can't do it or I didn't do it. I'm not eligible. And then I'll go from a couple of other schools still being ineligible just because of the different things going on, timing and things of that nature, not necessarily academics, because by that point in college, I was on point after my first semester. I was really strong academically. But so I was frustrated. But once I got that door open, and once I was able to get that first degree, I just kept on going. And I actually wanted to go to law school, but then family commitment slowed down, so that's why I went and got that MBA. But yeah, so now, and remember, guys, if y'all remember from the first episode, my guidance counselor told me to not even go to college unless I was going to be playing ball. So now I'm 3 master's degrees, just about 4 degrees total, from that person who she looked me in my eyes and said, don't go to college. So, education is absolutely important. I'm very proud to say, my kids are excellent. Well, let me rephrase that. My daughter is an excellent student, and my sons are strong students. So they're good students.
Don't put them out there like that.
Yeah. No, they're good students.
Don't put my nephews out there like that.
You know what I'm saying? I just got to keep it authentic. But my daughter is just, ridiculous with it, like straight A type stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Doing her thing.
No doubt. So she's that person. The boys are, strong AB type dudes. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's something that we always emphasize. So education is absolutely important. And to your point, as I close on this part, I use those same principles, same work ethic, and I'm like, I know you don't think, like when I was in high school, y'all thought I could only be a defender, but I'm a scorer too, and I'll show you. Well, y'all think I'm just an athlete, but I want to show you that I'm just as smart or smarter than anybody in this class. So I use that competitiveness, that same discipline of studying, things like that, teamwork. As far as, hey, did you get those notes from the professor? That kind of thing. Pass those notes over. So whatever the case may be. So I'm very, very proud of that. But again, that is also coinciding with my walk with Christ. So I was getting the light bulbs were turning on as I was coming to God too.
That's what's up. Yeah. And that stewardship, in part of giving God glory, everything we do, we should do unto Him as worship unto Him.
Yes.
And so we can't truly say that we're honoring Him if we're not handling our business in these other areas.
Thank you.
I know for me, I'm glad to hear that, hearing, my brother got 3 masters, so when you think about that movie back in the day, Who's the Master? Show now.
Yeah.
You used to bow down to the master, you got hit hollers 3 times, 1 time. Those 3 masters doing this thing.
Hey, but them masters ain't no PhD though, boy. You ain't calling a brother doctor though. That's why I say Dr. Theo Williams. You know how they say doctor, Reverend Martin Luther King, Dr. Theo Williams.
Yeah, I mean that was a long journey, and
Talk about that, bro, because I mean, not a lot of us young brothers reach that level, man. Like real talk. So
yeah, I mean it's crazy. You know, I was telling Nicole, it's interesting. I think there's like in the world there's probably like 2%. I don't know. It's a small number. And I'm left-handed. You know, you back on the court that left-handed hook.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I mean, I grew up thinking that being left-handed wasn't that rare. It's actually pretty rare in terms of the whole world.
Yeah.
And so being a black male left-handed PhD,
you know,
I'm like, you know,
and then you over 6'2", you know, so that's another
exactly.
smaller percentage, you know,
a real small percentage. And so, but for me, it's crazy because unlike you, I never got the passion for education. It sounds crazy to have a PhD, but I never had that passion, that drive. For me, it was more so, once again, how can I glorify God?
Right.
Two, if I'm going to be in any profession, whatever that profession is, how do I maximize my footing in that profession? And if you're in academia, you know, that's one of the pinnacles is getting your PhD. Right. And then number 3, recognizing the same way from a basketball standpoint. Think about all the little kids that would look up to us when we were in our heyday in high school, signing autographs, and the same thing in college. You know, I remember being in college signing autographs and things of that nature. And you go to these other countries and you do basketball because of my height. They ask you, do you know Michael Jordan? Can you get me to the NBA? Because all they see is tall guy.
Right.
Well, what if kids would look up to us in the same regard in terms of academics? And so what could I do to inspire them? And so basketball, as great as it was for you and I, but I think about it for me in particular, when I got injured, it was easy for someone to say, well, what have you done for us lately? Who are you now, Theo? Well, with this PhD, regardless, right now I'm Professor Theo because I work at a institution. But even if I'm not working at that institution, I'm no longer Professor Theo. But guess who I still am, though? I'm still Dr. Theo.
Absolutely.
Because that's something that can't be taken away from me now.
Right. And this ain't no honorary stuff either, y'all.
No, this isn't the honorary,
this ain't because, like Julius Erving doctor stuff either. This is the real deal. I'm proud of this dude.
This is the blood, sweat, and tears sitting on the couch, second guessing myself, working through it all, and then come on the other side of that. And so, but hearing you say that you're proud of me, that's part of it. Because I always tell people, anyone who has a PhD or anything like that, you don't do that by yourself. So, I remember at a party that my wife threw for me, I passed out some of those honorary PhDs I printed up for some people, my family, my wife, a couple colleagues, because it takes a village. So like we got this PhD, because my wife freed me up. I was able to let some stuff slack around the house every now and then in order to be working on this thing. And so it takes a village. It takes that support system. And it took me tapping into some of those things I learned on the court. So what's it like when them final sprints, when your legs are tired, your lungs are burning, yet you see the finish line or you desire something great for yourself.
Right.
And I tell people, students now who are in the same process, I have colleagues or friends who are working on their PhD or even students who are working on their bachelor's degree. You'll never truly appreciate that unless you've gone through some stuff. If it was a struggle, if there was some heartache, some pain, and then you appreciate it all the more. All right, so we want to transition one more time. Brother Hollis, talk to us about any other passions you may have, any other ways in which you've applied what you learned on the court to any other area of your life. Just give us a brief, whether it's for me, if I'm part of the spoken word, whatever it may be, the racial reconciliation. What are some of those passions?
Yeah.
Where you've been able to tap into that same dog, that same fight, that same he got go on the court that you think translated to other areas?
Well, let me say this for a second as I answer that. One thing I didn't really realize, another reason why you and I connect, and this is it's within line but a little off to the side, is part of our passion is to bring others along with us. And I just noticed that as I was listening to your story on how you passed out honorary, doctors to people because you realized that it takes a village, that you didn't do it on your own. Well, that's a basketball principle, right? What nobody gets up, and when you're getting interviewed or getting interviewed for the News Dispatch or news, nobody's gonna sit up here and say, yeah, I did everything by myself. I'm the freaking man.
Yeah.
I scored my team wouldn't have won without me. Now, I know some people that probably really thought that.
No doubt.
But most people know not to do that. So much so that as I've watched my sons play NBA 2K, they have this mode on there, and I don't play it, but I've seen it, and I thought it was very fascinating, that they actually give you points like when you're getting interviewed and how well you answer certain questions. And so you're already being taught through basketball, even in a video game, that it's not just about you. It's about the team, and it's about others, and it's about lifting others up. And so, because I was the same way, and this is just, again, guys, glimpse of how Theo and I would be speaking if the camera wasn't on. I felt the same way when I made it to the Hall of Fame. I wanted people to be there so that they could share this moment with me.
Makes a lot of sense.
And be a part of it and feel like, hey, I made it to the Hall of Fame, but not necessarily. We made it to the Hall of Fame.
No doubt.
And so I feel like that's kind of, again, that's just probably the kind of hearts you and I have. But I do believe that there are some principles there from Hoop. So I just kind of wanted to say that. I was picking up on that. But anyway, going back to the passions, I just, I enjoy teaching, like I mentioned. And, my passion for teaching really allowed me to grow in God faster. So one of the things I enjoyed, and one of the many roles that I've helped in churches and in ministry, was one of teaching. In particular, I love teaching leaders. And that is an absolute passion of mine. And I would love to do that again at some point, teach other leaders. So I love helping people, get indoctrinated and begin, but I really enjoy teaching leaders and helping them go to another level and role modeling that lifestyle. So that's a passion of mine, teaching, period. My kids, I'll tell them, all right, y'all, we about to talk for 10 minutes. They be like, yeah, Dad, it's about to be 30, because they know I love to teach. And so that is absolutely a passion of mine. I think, I got a lot of showbiz people in my family. And so low key, I do a little bit of that on the side,
Y'all be on the lookout.
Shout out to, actually, some local people from the crib, high school friends, shout out. I don't know if they ever see this, but Aaron Matkins and Omega Keys, I'll be supporting them and very happy for them and what they're doing. And it's definitely encouraged me to get back involved into the entertainment industry and, do some things. And so shout out to them. They're doing big things and just amazing things. So shout out to them and other people. But so I have some passions there. My dad acts, my brother Antoine acts, my brother Hollis III acts, my sister Holly acts, models. Let me see, so those are, as I'm thinking, I'm just going through because we have so many people that are involved in entertainment. My uncle was in a movie and acts and stuff like that, and so that's just kind of something that we've always kind of enjoyed in our family, and so it's just something that we've done. So I just kind of gotten involved with that. But when you're sharing things on Facebook and social media, you never know who you might inspire to be like, hey, it ain't too. I'm not too old. So I used to do it before, and then I've gotten back into it as I've gotten a little older. So those are some of the things that I enjoy doing and my passions. What about you?
For me, I think all my passions kind of fall underneath just the two areas: love investing in people, and I love telling stories.
Yeah.
And so whether it's that's impacted my marriage, whether it's my role as a pastor, my role as a professor, whether it's what I do with the spoken word, what I desire to do in terms of writing books and documentaries in the future. It's all about investing in people, like you say, bringing other people along. Recognizing that anything we've been blessed with is to be able to bless others. So we love,
Absolutely.
my wife and I, we just love investing in people, whether it's investing in marriages, investing in our students, the congregants.
Yes, sir.
Anytime we can invest, that's great. And telling stories. I love hearing people's stories. I mean, speaking of the PhD, a big part of that was the dissertation. Interviewing people, telling their stories. Mm-hmm. Spoken word, I love to tell stories. Writing, telling stories.
Hopefully someday y'all will get him out of retirement.
I'm gonna get inspired one day and drop something for y'all, no doubt.
Hey, y'all, he's nice with it. I'm gonna tell y'all, he's nice.
Appreciate that. And even what we're doing with this podcast, telling stories. And I wanted a different medium for that. I wanted to transition from the writing spoken word, so we're getting into these podcasts. And so for me, I would say those would be the two main passions. And applying basketball, the teamwork, the hard work, the ethics, being coached, knowing when to be benched, knowing when to practice, knowing when to rest, all those things have helped in all the areas in which I just spoke to. And so
Can I get you to pause for a second before you transition? I would love for you, I don't know how much time we have, but I would love for you. I'm very impressed and proud of you for, because as y'all know, this is a humble brother, but, he's a pastor, but he's also a pastor over a diverse ministry. And so they have a lot of diversity in their ministry, and him being a black pastor leading that group, I think that's an awesome thing. And he's really big on racial reconciliation.
I should slip my mind. That's definitely
I'm not letting that go, because I would love for you to just share briefly on your thoughts on that and how you approach that. And again, congratulations, because we believe that heaven ain't gonna just have a black side and a white side.
No doubt.
We believe that there's gonna be as diverse a ministry as you will see. So please speak to the people about that, man.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up with this. Just in terms of how that's been one of my passions since college. Meeting my best friend who was white, and we clashed right off the bat because of our differences racially. But we said, if we're going to be true to our walks with Christ, part of this is of it, because he's given us the ministry of reconciliation. And you reconcile based upon whenever there's division. And what we saw in America was division based upon racial lines. And so we were like, as we grew in our walks with Christ, we wanted to also grow in our love with each other. And that's something that we've tried to model out. That's something you and we've talked about, and we're going to probably be doing more work in that area. My best friend and I and my brother Tim Williams, sometimes we do a live broadcast called the Dialogue for Change that deals with that. And a lot of the writing and research I'm going to be doing in the future deals with those issues. And so that's definitely a passion. I'm glad you brought that to my remembrance. And so
absolutely,
we want to be mindful. We've covered a lot of stuff today.
Yes.
We thank y'all for your patience. We thank you for supporting us.
I hope y'all enjoyed this one. Yeah.
Episode 3. So we've covered the backstory, we passed the rock, and now we went from ballers to balling. So now stay tuned and get excited for some guests that we're going to be having in the near future. But until then, take care, God bless, and please be safe, y'all. We out of here.
Mask up.
Mask
up, y'all.
Peace.
Mask up.
Peace.